diesel generation. And for those of you who are in DRC, I believe right now, most of the generation, about 50% really is covered by diesel power, either those people who are generating power in their homes or on a commercial level. This can cost up to anywhere between $300 to $400 per megawatt hour. Let's go to the next. In the next few years, the country is also very rich in minerals. So right now, just like most of African countries, we really export raw products. But as we industrialize, and that is our dream as Africans, we are going to move into processing what we extract from the earth. That will mean we will need a lot of power for things like refining. For instance, BHP Billiton was requiring, I think, a range of between 3,000 and 5,000 megawatts for an aluminum plant that they were looking to put up. So this offers huge market potential. Now, that is just one example. If you look at the export market, it's really, the electric needs throughout the continent are pretty significant. The growth is going to be an average of 12% gigawatts. That is the demand that is coming from West Africa, and up to 20% gigawatts from East Africa. There are certainly other regions, for instance, the southern region, that is South Africa, Zambia, Angola, and so on, which already have agreements with the country. And I think we're going to come back and have a discussion about where, especially the agreements with South Africa, are at the moment. Now, one of the key things that we have to realize about electricity is a commodity like any other. The only difference between electricity and other commodities, it's not easily storable at this moment. But as things move forward and more technology is developed, we don't know what will happen in the future. And that will have a significant impact into what can happen. So power exchanges offer very good opportunity in terms of aggregating people who want to purchase power. As you know, Inga really, when you look at Inga itself and the entire complex around it, it should generate about 120,000 megawatts of power. That's a lot. So for you to sell all that, you will have to have a lot of bilateral agreement, and power exchanges offer you an opportunity where even small players can come in and take a little bit of that. The other thing that it enables, it's really the efficient pricing of the power. So you don't have to adjust your pricing all the time. Let's move on to the next slide. I think from our end, the key of text that we are going to take off from this one is there is demand both in DRC and the sub-region and the entire continent. We cannot say that it's an either or. We have to have this as a one. We have to talk about the market as one. As much as we like to, we can segment it initially, but we have to put it all together. We also have to look at what is the role of the states. Are they the ones who are going to come in and purchase the power? And depending on one country to another versus other off-takers. In some countries, power has been totally privatized. If you look at a country like Kenya, it's a totally private affair, and government really provides a lot of policy and incentive to that. There are other countries where governments have play a significant role because they own the utilities company. If you look at a country like Zambia, ZESCO is basically wholly owned by the government. So there are also other opportunities where small private players come into offtake, not even small. They can also be large, for instance, mining companies and so on and all that. Now, one of the major things that we have to look at, markets are determined by one thing. It's all about supply and demand. So the beautiful thing that we have with Inga, it's right in the middle of everything. Inga can supply the East very comfortably when there is during the East peak season, and it can also supply the West during their peak season without significant interruption to local demand. We can move forward. I think that's all that I have to say. When we come back to the panel discussion, we'll have more discussion.
Great, thanks, Jacob. I think just one quick clarification question, I guess. So from your perspective as a financier and as a trader, what's going to be very important, as I was saying before, is we basically want to move from kind of political talking to actually getting very concrete, financially backed offtake agreements. What do you think will actually be required to give equity investors, lenders, the confidence that they'll need to invest in Inga? And I guess that might vary from off-taker to off-taker, but it'd just be good to get your perspective on that.
I think in terms of from the financial perspective, and that is something that we're going to be talking about tomorrow in another session. Financial institution look and assess risk. If my risk appetite is lower, then I'm not going to go into this. But the key thing, one, we're going to have, for this kind of project, there has to be political and commercial guarantees. And I understand there are institutions which are ready to step in and provide that. For instance, MEGA, there is the Africa Guarantee Fund and so on. They're willing to step in and provide that comfort that there is going to be, those risks are eliminated. On the other hand, the first thing that I'll look at, is this going to be viable, and am I going to get money paid? A return on my investment. That is going to be key. So it's going to be variant. And when we are talking about this project, it's not visible for us to take the whole of it and implement it at once. So it's going to be a chunk going forward. The beautiful thing is, when you look at Inga, people are looking at Inga 3 only, but people don't remember there is already Inga 1, and that can be used as a great tool in terms of leveraging, looking at the entire project.
Great, thank you. And I understand on the call we have a couple of people from financiers. So I saw KfW, BlackRock, Trade Development Bank on the list of invitees. Would any of you like to share a perspective as to what you think would actually need to be in place for you to kind of put your hands in your pockets for a project like this? I think it's okay. We can pick that up later, probably in the wider Q&A. I just want to move on. So I guess, you know, as we kind of go around Africa looking at the different potential off-takers, one of the most advanced export markets in terms of political agreements that's referred to is South Africa. So I think at this point it would be useful, and I think, you know, other power pools and other countries are going to have to go on this journey of kind of putting in place the political commitments and then advancing those forward. So I think it'd be good to hear from Tabane Odette, kind of what the status is on the offtake agreement to South Africa, and kind of the process that you've followed to get to this point in terms of MOUs, what documents being signed, what the sequencing has been, because I think it'll be informative for other people.
Thanks. Thank you very much. So I will start off from the current arrangement where we have entered into a treaty between South Africa and the DRC. And through that treaty, South Africa committed to offtake from Inga 3. South Africa committed to offtake 2,500 megawatts. South Africa committed to offtake 2,500 megawatts, and that commitment it still stands. It's still in place. The commitment was further ratified by South African cabinet.
Sorry, Tabani. Can I just ask everyone to confirm that you're on mute, please? Thanks.
I think it's Vincent Noel that's not on mute. Yeah, so as I was saying, the commitment was ratified by South African cabinet. And this commitment is also reflected on our country's electricity master plan, which was passed by cabinet in October last year. So from a political commitment point of view, South Africa has ticked all the necessary processes relating to the initial 2,500 megawatts. The second part of our commitment as a country was the engagement with the Southern African Power Pool, because there is a recognition that the project, the Inga project, should benefit initially the region, but broadly the continent. So there are a number of member countries on the Southern African Power Pool that South Africa has engaged with. Initially, it was to have a discussions around transmission grid strengthening, but those discussions have evolved to improving the energy trade within the power pool. We are working towards developing an intergovernmental memorandum of agreement with countries that are represented on CEP, more especially the countries that have been identified as the transit country for the transmission solution. Second, we have been in discussions with the ADP office in the DRC, which is the technical office established to oversee the development of the Inga project. We have had a number of meetings, both at the ministerial level between South Africa and DRC, as well as at the technical level between the two countries. Both SNEL, which is electricity utility in DRC, and ESCOM, which is our utility in South Africa, have also engaged at a technical level to try and design an optimum transmission solution. So those discussions are ongoing. What we have experienced as a bit of a difficulty is the speed at which the procurement process for the developer is evolving. Those that are not aware, DRC as a sovereign country is running a procurement process to procure the developer. In our view, that process is taking longer to be concluded. And this could have an impact on the South Africa's interest. The current status of that, and I'm sure DRC will elaborate further, is that there are two consortiums that have been shortlisted. These two consortiums have recently been asked to merge their proposal so that they come out with an optimum proposal. The merging of the two and the optimization, in our view, is taking longer than we initially planned. This puts South Africa at a risk because the committed capacity has been set aside on our national electricity master plans. But South Africa needs to make a decision soon, because if we are not able to procure that capacity, then obviously there will be further shortages over and above what we are experiencing now. There will be further shortages if the project is delayed. So that's our biggest concern as a country, that the delays will have a negative impact on our electricity supply and demand. Now, going forward, I have two propositions. So from a project point of view, what we think is necessary to enable the project is the appointment of a credible and experienced developer. This is
might take a little longer than that. What do you think the DRC has to do over the next 2 to 3 years to get to a point where, you know, people are going to feel happy investing on the basis of the DRC demand?
Qu'est-ce qu'il a dit là? Mais je crois qu'au niveau, la demande interne
Yeah, no problem.
Je crois qu'il y a eu une planification au niveau de la SNEL. Je crois que la SNEL peut donner également des chiffres concernant la demande à long terme, puisque nous sommes dans le long terme, puisqu'on dit que Inga 3 va se faire dans une dizaine d'années, donc nous sommes dans le long terme. Je crois que la SNEL aussi peut avoir des chiffres en ce qui concerne la demande à long terme des centres urbains et même aussi peut-être de la partie industrielle. Mais comme on est dans le long terme, on est dans la dizaine d'années, je dis que c'est également le temps nécessaire pour pouvoir faire la promotion des zones franches industrielles.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I see we have people from SNEL on the line. Would anybody from SNEL like to contribute or complement anything that's been said?
Ah bon, c'est OK. Sauf que les micros, ça passe.
Ah, ça passe.
Ça passe déjà. OK. Bon, s'agissant des prévisions de SNEL, je voudrais d'abord faire remarquer que SNEL n'est plus l'unique opérateur dans le secteur de l'électricité. Donc, il y a plusieurs entreprises maintenant dans le secteur qui doivent concourir au développement du secteur de l'électricité en République démocratique du Congo. Mais du côté de SNEL, nous avons un plan directeur pour l'électrification de ce que nous considérons comme les milieux auxquels la SNEL pense en tant que société nationale. Nous avons un plan directeur pour vous donner une idée sur la consommation, la demande d'énergie. Il faut vous mettre en tête qu'à l'heure actuelle, l'électrification, le taux de décès en électricité de la RDC est extrêmement faible. Si en Afrique du Sud, ce taux est de l'ordre de, je ne sais pas, dans les... Ils sont dans 90%. À 90%. Ici, en RDC, nous ne sommes pas nous nous trouvons en dessous de 20% pour une population de plus de 80 millions d'habitants. Donc, même sans donner, disons, un chiffre précis, vous vous rendez compte qu'il y a beaucoup à faire. Nous avons la plupart de nos centres souffrent du manque d'électricité. D'ailleurs, c'est ça qui justifie que les activités économiques ne tardent encore à démarrer vraiment, parce que nous sommes encore à un niveau très très faible du taux de décès, et donc nous sommes très optimistes par rapport au plan directeur que nous avons élaboré. Nous sommes très optimistes quant à la consommation de l'énergie. Alors, je voudrais relever aussi le fait suivant. Il y a souvent un cercle vicieux lorsque l'on veut cerner la demande d'électricité d'un pays. Souvent, les investisseurs attendent que les infrastructures soient déjà là pour qu'ils puissent venir investir. De l'autre côté, celui qui doit mettre en place les infrastructures en question veut d'abord s'assurer que les investisseurs vont s'engager dans leurs investissements, qu'ils vont effectivement venir. Et donc, nous sommes en train de tourner en rond. Alors, pour sortir de ce cercle vicieux, je vous informe qu'ici en RDC, vers la décennie 80, la SNEL a lancé ce qu'on appelle l'électrification intensive. On a expérimenté cela dans certains coins de la République. Eh bien, je vous assure que après avoir installé les procédés au développement des infrastructures électriques pour aller un peu plus vite dans l'électrification de ces coins-là, les réseaux s'est retrouvé en saturation très rapidement. Et pour le moment, un des grands problèmes que nous connaissons, c'est justement le piratage de l'énergie électrique. Parce que les gens, la population a toujours besoin de l'énergie. La SNEL n'arrive pas à régler ces problèmes de façon durable et les gens ne veulent pas attendre qu'en 1997, il était question de construire une centrale de 6000 MW à cette époque-là. Mais il se fait que l'évolution des choses au plan interne n'ont pas été en faveur de la mise en œuvre rapide, disons, de ce projet. La RDC, comme vous le savez, a connu beaucoup de problèmes en interne et le projet avait été mis en veilleuse. Après l'Égypte, il y a eu le Nigeria qui a signé en 2008 un protocole d'accord avec 7 pays de l'Afrique centrale dans le cadre du pôle énergétique de l'Afrique centrale. Il existe un protocole d'accord entre tous ces pays, à savoir la RDC, le Congo-Brazzaville, le Gabon, le Tchad, la République centrafricaine, le Cameroun, la Guinée équatoriale, ainsi que le Nigeria. Il était question qu'on puisse construire, qu'on puisse conjuguer les efforts pour finaliser le projet Inga, Grand Inga, et auquel serait associée une liaison haute tension, très haute tension entre Inga et le Nigeria, mais qui prendrait au passage tous les pays que je viens de citer. C'est le projet Inga Calabar. Donc le projet existe, la volonté entre ces pays est là. Donc c'est question de réactiver tout ce qui était prévu. Et vous verrez que s'il faut y aller de l'avant avec notamment ce protocole d'accord, Inga 3 n'est pas suffisant pour satisfaire toute la demande.
Si vous me permettez, je vais juste faire un petit commentaire. C'est la présidence de conseiller spécial aux investissements. Dans l'approche de l'Afrique du Sud, on oublie une donnée, c'est qu'il y a potentiellement 3 pays qu'il faut traverser. Et aujourd'hui, dans le montage financier qui est fait, l'ouvrage commun à la centrale coûte près de 14 milliards. Il y a 4 milliards qu'il faut mettre en place pour financer le traçage d'une ligne à travers la Zambie, le Zimbabwe et potentiellement le Botswana. Quand on parle d'Afrique du Sud, il faut toujours intégrer ces donnes que même avant d'arriver en Afrique du Sud, pour que le projet soit bancable, il faut prendre en considération le coût des lignes. Je préside la commission financement, c'est un point qu'on abordera aujourd'hui, demain, mais dans les marchés cibles, quand on parle de marchés cibles, avant d'arriver en Afrique du Sud, il y a des pays qu'il faut traverser. Et la bancabilité du projet en termes de marché cible dépendra de comment on met en place la société de projet qui va permettre de financer ce traçage. C'est un élément très important, d'où le schéma de voir comment faire de manière simultanée la consommation locale avec un opérateur d'aluminium et voir de manière phasée à aller vers l'Afrique du Sud et les autres pays. Donc, je veux qu'on prenne quand même en compte cette donne quand vous réfléchissez sur les marchés cibles et le combiner avec les options de financement. C'était juste un commentaire que je voulais mettre sur la table.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I think we'll pick that up when we talk to the representatives from Central African Power Pool and Southern African Power Pool. We're going to have to move on, but I see Angela had a hand up from AFDB. Angela, do you have a quick comment to make before we move on to looking at the power pools?
Yes, Jacob, I had a comment to make, but I think Tabang said it very nicely. I just wanted to mention that we're listening, but it wasn't very clear to me where we could really lay our hands on where the real offtake is going to happen. Because we have South Africa, which in 2 or 3 years' time, if the project doesn't start, we'll have to rethink this. And then we have DRC that's thinking of setting up industrial zones. So, but I understand that the subsequent information from DRC has shed some light, but would hope that these projects that they've mentioned also do start being resuscitated. The aluminium
1,000 megawatts, subject to certain conditions, and those conditions have not been met to date. So the current firm commitment from our side is 2,500. The part on the transmission, yes, we have done the study on the transmission options. We have discussed between ESCOM, SNEL, ADP, and the South African Department of Energy. We have discussed on the viable option. We have also engaged with the transit countries on the viable option. So you can say the transmission work has been done for the South African initial offtake, but we agree that we need to do further technical studies on the transmission before we finalize on a final solution for transmission. So high-level studies have been done on transmission, but we have not confirmed the solution yet.
Thanks, Tabane. And from the previous conversation we've had, I think the other commitments are a lot less firm than that, as in either there are kind of very high level political commitments, or there's the inclusion of imports from WAP within from the Inga within master plans such as WAP, but actually advancing that towards any sort of commercial commitment hasn't yet been done. Does anybody, Nyangasi, do you have any follow up to that, or does anybody else have a question? If so, you can raise your hand.
Sorry, it was just to get an exact idea. So for the financial conversation tomorrow, what's on the table and what's not on the table, and maybe some comments on the quality of that demand would have been good as well, with regards to willingness to pay, tariffs, and that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Ligasi. So going through the conversations that we've had, there's a 2 gigawatt inclusion of offtake in the WAP master plan. So there's a proposed sort of 2030 2 gigawatt offtake into the West Africa power pool. There's an ongoing conversation about kind of who's going to be providing the guarantees for that, but there's an identified need based on the anticipated cost of the project There was a conversation around an offtake of around 3 gigawatts to Angola, but there's not been anybody from Angola to kind of flesh that out in any more detail. On the East Africa power pool side, it's, I think at a kind of macro East Africa level, it needs, the master plan will be under development. So I think there's not yet a hard commitment to a gigawatt number, but that will be kind of fleshed out. So I think the primary offtaker, the most advanced offtakers that you're looking at are DRC, and the most promising offtakers on the DRC side there was talk of an aluminium smelter, and then various other kind of offtakers there. You're also looking at, obviously, South Africa is the advanced with a firm commitment, Angola, and then what?
Course, also the private sector commercial investors. So I think all this discussion has been extremely helpful in terms of clarifying many of the questions that will come up tomorrow. That's
great. Thanks very much, Cecilia. And I think, as you say, it's circular. I think one of the challenges with the demand is, as we say, a lot of the demand is a political commitment, a statement that yes, we'd be interested in 2 gigawatts, 3 gigawatts, or something like that. I think where the financing conversation can be really useful is to actually define, okay, if you want to take your 2 gigawatts from just being something in a speech to actually getting the 2 gigawatts, this is what you're going to have to do. Like, in hard terms, you're going to have to provide XYZ guarantee, and almost a sort of term sheet of if you want that power, this is what you're going to have to do. Because I think that's what's needed to really focus the conversation from the sort of political to the commercial. But yeah, thanks for that, and let's sort of make sure these two groups merge. I see Batche Balde has got his hand up from AFDB. Batche, do you have something you'd like to ask?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll just like to answer the last speaker regarding feasibility studies. AFDB has financed a feasibility study that indicated an initial low head capacity for 4,800 megawatt and high head 7,800. So that has been done. But again, we're a long way from political commitment to actual project structuring and financing. And whichever way you look at it, the first thing you need is demand from a credit-worthy off-taker. So South Africa, backed by the government, we think that's committed, approved at the cabinet level. The utility in DRC, that one is chicken and egg. You can create that if you have an aluminium smelter as an anchor off-taker paying in dollars. That helps. And then along the way, also, those countries have to make commitments. So what I'm trying to say is we've done a study, but get into real demand where you negotiate a PPA terms sheet and commitments are made in the rapidly evolving power sector space. I think that's the real challenge. So you really need anchor off-takers that can make it happen, and you start there and scale up, I guess. So I think I just wanted to make that point. And in terms of scale also, 4,800 gigawatt is quite a lot of power when you look at PPPs and transactions that have been project financed on the continent. So we have a bit of experience with Ruzuzi, Lactigal in West Africa. Even WAP, we've looked at some regional power generation projects, and it's never easy. When you say take or pay.
1000 mégawatts. Aujourd'hui, ils ont un déficit presque de 1500, 1800. Je parle sous le contrôle de M. Vicanono, qui est aussi membre parmi les sociétés qui produisent de l'électricité et distribuent les ventes de l'électricité au Congo. Donc, ce déficit est réel. Et côté SNEL, il a été prévu 3000 mégawatts. Donc, 1500 à 2000 seront réservés à la population, à l'industrie manufacturière locale qui se développe avec les zones économiques et tout ça. Et on envisage quand même avoir aussi 1000 mégawatts pour d'autres industries parce que parmi les candidats acheteurs, nous avons aujourd'hui un candidat aluminier chinois qui lui demande 10 000 mégawatts. Nous pensons que la SNEL pourra donner des fils que 1500 mégawatts, 1000 à 1500, parce qu'une usine d'aluminium, pour qu'elle fonctionne dans sa phase initiale, elle a besoin d'au moins 1500 mégawatts. Mais il demande 10, bon, on va aller progressivement. C'est pour ça qu'il y a Inga 3, Inga 4, Inga 5, Inga 6. Donc, quand vous parlez, je dois ajouter que ça, ce sont des écrits de manifestations d'intention que nous devons confirmer. Et les discussions ont démarré pour que chaque demandeur, chaque client confirme sa demande. Il est certain que pour ce qui concerne Inga 3, 11 000 MW, les manifestations d'intérêt que nous avons aujourd'hui dépassent le niveau, la capacité de 11 000 MW. On va certainement parler déjà de 4 000 MW. Vous avez raison de dire qu'il faut sécuriser. On va les sécuriser au travers des accords commerciaux qui n'ont pas encore été signés. Voilà ce que je peux dire à ce niveau ici. Donc, en résumé, il existe bien des acheteurs. L'Afrique du Sud se base du traité 2500, mais l'Afrique du Sud nous a écrit aussi pour demander 2500 supplémentaires avec certaines conditions à remplir. Deuxièmement, nous avons les miniers du Katanga qui ont un minimum de 3000 MW qui demandent. Ce sont des écrits, ce sont des engagements, c'est dit publiquement. Et la SNEL, à qui nous réservons 3000 MW parce que nous pensons que Inga ne va pas servir les industries. Inga 3 doit déjà commencer à servir les populations et les industries de moyennes, petites, comment on appelle, moyennes entreprises qui ont besoin de l'électricité. N'oubliez pas que notre pays est sous-industrialisé. Nous importons tout, même les cure-dents, parce qu'il n'y a pas d'électricité pour que les gens construisent des usines partout. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire. Pour Inga 4, nous avons les miniers qui demandent 10 000, nous avons l'Angola qui demande 5 000, nous avons l'Égypte et le Nigeria qui demandent aussi au-delà de 6 000. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire. Merci.
Great, thank you very much. Can I, unfortunately, I heard that through a translator, so I just want to make sure that I've got the stack right, if you like. 2.5 gigawatts to SA, and there's a firm agreement to take that subject to it being able to be delivered on time. 1.5 gigawatts.
No, I'm aware. I only joined the bank a few months ago, 2 months ago, but I'm aware that the bank financed studies, the 2013 studies. And those studies clearly showed that we could start with a project of 4,800 megawatts. So in the event that we want to carry out a new project for 11,000, which may be, which DRC would be entitled to, then what it would mean is that we would no longer be carrying out complementary studies. We would have to carry out an entirely new set of studies. So whereas today we could start the project and move fairly fast, if we are to start doing studies for a new project of 11,000 megawatts, what it would mean is that the starting point shifts from today to about 2.5 years into the future. So will that demand in South Africa be there? Let me finish. This is what I think, so I don't know. Maybe what I'm saying is that today we have studies that talk about the 4,800. I am not aware that there are studies today that we can show for 11,000. What I understand is that those studies have to be carried out afresh or start from scratch. Maybe there's new information that I'm not aware of, but I know based on the studies that the bank did, those are the only studies that we have at hand. So I think what I wanted to emphasize is that we have a situation, and in any case, I actually don't see what would be wrong. We do it if we are so confident of the demand. You do the first 4,800 and have that entire demand taken, evacuated, and consumed, and then develop the new plant in the meantime for the additional capacity. So I think that's what I wanted to share. We are concerned at the bank that without certainty in the capacity of the plant that we are talking about, it will be very difficult to start the development process for this project, which we all agree is very much needed by our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think that's the core issue, really. Do we want to take something manageable in the short term, or do we want to kind of pursue a bigger project and risk the kind of the most credible firm demand that will actually underwrite that disappearing? Are there any responses from the DRC side, from the ministry on the DRC side?
Oui, merci beaucoup. D'abord, je voudrais saluer Monsieur le vice-président de la banque et félicitations pour votre nomination. J'espère que nous allons nous rencontrer bientôt. Et aussi remercier au nom du peuple congolais, je peux me permettre, du président de la République, aussi parce que la banque nous a accompagnés. Et nous avons commencé le processus de ce projet pour chercher les financements pour les études à 2003. C'est seulement en 2008 que la banque a donné son accord. Le processus a démarré avec le financement de la Banque africaine de développement. Lui était cette intervention. Aujourd'hui, on n'en serait pas là avec un projet qu'il soit de 4 000, qu'il soit de 8 000 ou de...
To develop a project, you need to develop a project based on sound studies that are available. Otherwise, if we have to wait another maybe 1 year, 2 years for additional studies to be done, I'm not sure that the South African demand will still be there, because I was actually in a meeting yesterday where there were discussions about nuclear as an option because of uncertainty on Inga. And I'll leave my submissions there and request maybe Director Bachi to provide some input. Thank you.
Thank you, VP Kevin. I think you've summarized it very, very well. I'll just reiterate that the commitment from South Africa, as far as I know, and from what I heard from Tabang, is 2.5 gigawatt, which has been approved by Cabinet and the government and is part of the plan. Beyond that, they would need further approvals to commit to anything beyond that. On the other hand, the domestic demand also of 3 gigawatt, etc. These are new developments that we are not part of the feasibility study. And the feasibility study is for Grand Inga, that is correct. But the first phase was for 4,800 with a low head and 7,800 high head. I think South Africa has also confirmed that. So the bank is willing to support, but financing these types of projects, and I alluded to that before you joined the call, that if you talk about hydro, for project finance, the largest I know of is 4,000, about 420 megawatt. And this is 10 times that, if phase one. So when you scale to 11 gigawatt, it's a totally different ball game. And at the end of the day, whether it's 4,800, 7,800, or even 11 gigawatt, it is a credit-worthy off-taker putting a commitment through a power purchase agreement term sheet, or actually a power purchase agreement that will make it financeable. So once you have that, then we have a project. Without a credit-worthy off-taker, there will be no project. We've had extensive discussions, and we are willing to support in any way to make Inga happen. Our president has directed us to do that, but for it to be bankable, really the structuring and the sizing must be very, very clear. And in terms of procurement also, the bank has its rules. And as you said, we have about $55 million that is ready and available to complete outstanding project development work. Because we think we can be working in parallel whilst we procure a new developer also. At the end of the day, apart from South Africa, all the other off-takers, from my perspective, are potential. So until they commit in writing, like South Africa, or negotiate a term sheet, it will only be a potential demand. So we stand ready, the team is there. We have many projects that we benchmark against. The bank has a lot of experience in project finance, in hydro also, and transmission lines. We've indicated this, over 5,000 kilometers of lines across Africa. So our teams are available and to proceed as approved by the bank. If it's 11 gigawatt, even if we have new studies that justify that, I believe we have to go back to the board to explain the change in scope and the new requirements of the project based on the new evidence. So I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Actually, if we can just clarify, is the studies which is going to be funded by BAD based on 4,800, or it's for the rest? That's the first question. The other thing is,
it is for 4,800 low head and 7,800 high head. I think our South African colleagues have confirmed that also. So if you want to do 11 gigawatt, we have to see studies if it exists. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Now,
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que les discussions pourraient se poursuivre.
Sorry. Vincent, can you go on mute?
Pardon?
Bruno, je peux encore terminer ma question.
Non,
I have to finish my question.
Sorry, Vika, could you go on mute, please?
I have to finish my question. Before we finish my question, voilà. Donc, 4,800, that's what the fund is for. It's really critical for us.
Vika, please, can you go on mute? Great, thank you. Apologies.
Okay, all right, thank you, Bachi. I'm not sure if VP and Bachi will be take part tomorrow in the finance workshop as well. I believe that we can explore further the position of BAD. As I said, what we knew before I come to the workshop was that BAD position will change, but thank you very much for clarifying on that. That's very, very important. And my concern, as I expressed it, was that based on the off-takers, but I did know that I did take part with South African government, and they have shown the interest of buying less than 5,000, contrary to what they have written to us, because as far as the DRC is concerned, we have not been notified yet, but take that as advantage. As I said, when you look at the technical studies, when you look at what SNEL, which is a national electricity company, has been in charge of the Inga project before, what they have said is that if you invest, if you build for 4,800 in stage, which is good, but the problem is that you might not be in position for the other phases to make it 11,000 for the Inga 3. That's what they have said so far. I believe that, of course, you have to listen to the technician, but as I said, it's anything, some things better than nothing in the hand. Maybe we understand that, but we might not be in position to get to 11,000 because of the technical concern. I would like to stop there because I know we have passed the time already, but I'm happy after consultation with other folks in the government, so we can discuss this tomorrow in finance workshop. Now, Bruno, take over.
Gareth, can I make a comment, please?
Yeah, I just see VP AFDB has his hand up. Kevin, do you have anything to add finally?
Sorry, I think I forgot to put my hand down. However, I can clarify that it was always envisaged that whatever studies are outstanding as far as the 4,800 megawatts are complementary studies. So we will not be starting from scratch. It's purely complementary studies to complete that particular project.
Thanks very much, VP. Thabane, you had a comment.
Yes, no, I thought I should reiterate the South African position for the benefit of the special advisor to the president in DRC. South Africa has made a firm commitment to offtake 2,500 megawatts. That commitment is in writing. Further to making that firm commitment, we received a communication from DRC requesting whether we would consider to increase that to 5,000 megawatts. South Africa responded to that communication, indicating the following. Yes, because of the reduced supply, domestic supply from South Africa, we are keen to offtake additional capacity from Inga to the total of 5,000 megawatts. However, there are a number of conditions that we put forward. One of the conditions was we needed to have sight of the studies that indicates that 11,000 megawatts is an optimal starting point. Second, we indicated that South Africa's commitment to increase to 5,000 megawatts must be sanctioned by a cabinet. So those conditions have not been met. So cabinet has not approved 5,000 megawatts. Our cabinet has approved 2,500 megawatts. Secondly, we have not had sight to the studies that indicates the 11,000 megawatts as the optimal starting point. I thought I should make those positions clear so that the special advisor is also on board as to the South African position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bachi. I'm looking forward to talk with you guys further tomorrow in the finance committee. To not be accepted, which bad doesn't take part of this. We're expecting your leadership.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The VP will be there and some other colleagues, sir. Thank you,
okay. I think my colleague Kapanji, the guy in charge of ADP, the Inga Development Agency, has something to say.
Thank you very much. There's one final comment which I think will obviously relate to some of the mining demand from John Cagnoni, who's the VP of the Chamber of Mines in the DRC. John, do you have something to contribute before we wrap up?
Yes. Let me be clear. I've mentioned already that our need today is almost in the range of 1,000.
Vika,
Of 1,000. So we're talking about needs in 1 or 2 years, which will be exceeding 3,000 megawatts. And that I'm talking only about Inga. If I could also now add one of new aluminum plant, which will be really in western part of DRC, they will be consuming a lot. So for the World Bank, I don't think that there's really issue about off-takers. When it comes to mining company, our need will be really much beyond even the 4,000 megawatt we are talking. Thank you. That was a small comment I wanted to make.
Thanks very much, John. I'll just give everyone a second to just confirm there are no final comments before we wrap up.
Bon, je voulais tout simplement, ce n'est pas un commentaire, c'est une information. Le mode de financement de ce projet Inga 3, c'est le mode BOT. C'est un contrat de concession.